What's good, everybody? Today is September 5th. We're about to run through this super clean short setup today, and we're going to run through why we could expect such a huge dump on a Friday like this. Without further ado, just hop straight in. All right, so clearing up the charts, right? Zooming out on the bigger time frame, let's look at what the market's done throughout the week, right? So we had been pretty much playing around this range for most of the week until yesterday. We pretty much broke out, right? So we broke out and we went ahead and targeted this external high on ES, right? And if you look, ES has been the much more bullish index, right? It's taken this high over here and then pushed lower. And then from here, we started blasting off right here and we ended up taking that external high, right? So this morning we were at all-time highs, right? In the market and Q over here had still just taken that internal high, but it had been way lower than this external draw, which is all-time highs, right? So now we place in a much bigger time frame SMT sitting about here, right? And this is something that I'm not immediately looking to take effect, right? But I'm understanding that it's there because it gives me a sense of bearish pressure for the day or maybe even the week, right? And as well, if we look, Asia wasn't that much below. So yeah, so really nothing to look at there. But coming into the day, we had placed in a huge 8:30 news candle. So if we look, whenever we get 8:30 news, if the market puts in a huge 1-minute candle, 15-minute candle, whatever it might be, wherever the discernible range is, the draws and liquidity on that candle, that's where I want to mark out as high quality draws and liquidity for the day. Meaning that if one side doesn't get taken, I'm expecting it to go ahead and get taken, right? I'm expecting it to go ahead and get taken, and that's exactly what we usually see, right? So looking right here, 15-minute candle, 15-minute candle, boom, boom. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, we press this, right? We rebalance, and then we left a tiny bit more generated liquidity. We have imbalances below us. On the bigger time frame, after we just hunted liquidity, we now had generated a little bit of liquidity, which is that news drawn liquidity. And then we've also went ahead and now we're expecting to see the follow through of hunting that liquidity, right? So if I'm expecting anything, I'm expecting a move to go hunt that liquidity and potentially even rebalance to equilibrium of this bigger time frame price range, right? So quickly just drawing that in. Equilibrium will look something like this. Boom, boom, and then choosing the templates, we're gonna get something like this, right? So that's equilibrium drawing, completely decimate that, and then we even go all the way to the low over here on ES, right? So looking lower, right, what do we actually see happen? So morning hits that 8:30 news candle, right? Huge candle, both sides, crazy nice wick. That gives us a beautiful draw on liquidity, right? We push higher, S&P's in play. Now I'm waiting for market open, right? I'm not looking to take a setup before market open because usually we'll see the market manipulate at open, right? It's that injection of volatility. We see manipulation opposite direction, then a run. Especially for this setup, when we've been generating liquidity, we need a signal that we're going to now switch directions. And that signal is two things. It's time and price being aligned, which is the injection of volatility to go ahead and manipulate. And then it's manipulate higher and displacement, right? So once I see my displacement, gives me confirmation to go ahead and enter short, right? So I'm watching this, and this is the 9:30 candle. So after seeing manipulation in a dump, if you wanted to get into short, it wouldn't have been a bad idea. I didn't like it personally. I thought it was just way too early. I thought it was just too tight, and I didn't like the confirmation that I had to go ahead and take this trade. But some people did take this, and this was pretty clean. So yeah. But the second thing that we saw happen was a clean-ish kind of bait setup on ES, right? So after 9:30, we kind of played around in the range after right about here till 9:36. ES or NQ over here had been pushing lower, right? So it's already back within equilibrium of this range, pretty much. And then ES had failed to break that change of the state low, right? So we hadn't seen a change on ES. So I'm still expecting ES to maybe manipulate one more time before dropping low, right? So what it goes ahead and does, it kind of makes a bit of a fake manipulation right here. So we get a fake manipulation and then a fake displacement, right? The reason that this displacement is not valid in an area in which we go ahead and take shorts right here is because we didn't take a high, right? And like we said before, change of the state happens after we take that high, and then we make that change of state with displacement, right? So the true change in the state would have been still right here. It's the high of that model. And if we look, we ended up closing below that, but we didn't get a sustained displacement, which tells me, yeah, I'm not really liking that structure, right? As well with the point that ES is at, I'm expecting to see some kind of high get taken or SMT put in right there. And we eventually get the SMT put in with the next push higher, right? Next push higher, right around 948. Now 950 macro is open. We just had our manipulation. We're expecting the macro to now be distribution, right? So we have our manipulation. We have that SMT placed in within the macro. And then we go ahead and we dump, right? So we dump, we make the change of the state, displacement. And then right here on that initial candle is the only time in which you could have got entered in unless you looked for some kind of something more, right? So actually, you had a couple opportunities for entry here on ES, but still, yeah, this was your opportunity to enter. I thought this was the cleanest over here on ES right here. SMT, stop at the high, and then we just go ahead and leave runners for here. 2.78R was a super clean, efficient setup. I didn't trade this because of two reasons, right? Number one, I already taken a bit of a loss this week, so I was kind of wanting to chill out on Friday. I didn't expect to see the biggest, like the best price action, and I was still kind of viewing that morning move as a bit of kind of just consolidation. And looking back, the setup was super clean, so it's something I need to trade my eyes towards more. But that 830 news candle, and I was also using this kind of some back testing, right? Because I was expecting to maybe see this low get taken, but then not a push higher, so I didn't want to just trade a 1.27R and then leave my stop to break even and gets break even stopped out, right? But I'm watching this and I'm like, I mean, it could definitely play, but I'm not confident in this low. And because of that, I didn't want to take the full trade because that's kind of the amount of R I want around a 2R, 2.7. That's kind of like what I like to normally get, but I'm not confident in that as my low hanging fruit. So I don't want to just trade to there, right? So now looking back, it gives me further confidence that when we have that 830 news candle, we are expecting to see that get taken, right? Even if there's internal lows in here, they're all just going to be feeders for extra liquidity for us to go ahead and take, right? Because normally when we see a low like this, it gives us confidence that that's a high resistance level that we might not want to take out, right? You might want to get closer to it and then just place it in a low that's close to it, right? That now becomes generating liquidity for us to go manipulate one more time, place in more lows, and then run, right? That's low resistance liquidity run. But when we see it and it is a news drawn liquidity or it's market open drawn liquidity, it's no longer something that we're scared to hit, but it's something that we want to hit, right? And just recognizing that and making the mental shift of the facts and not kind of using our brains and like the way we feel when we look at the charts to make that decision for us. So that's kind of the thing I struggle with today and why I didn't take the setup. But recognizing it in the moment, this was super clean, I'm not gonna lie. And watching this play out, like I said, I usually like to zoom in after I get a 5-minute change in state. So 5-minute change, I like to see if I can get some kind of 15-second model, right? So sadly, there was no internal model, or else, because that's the second way you can get involved is you can look for the internal model and then you can trade the internal model. But there was no clean internal model, in my opinion. Yeah, I didn't see a single clean internal model that we could trade. Like, and when I say trade the internal model, I just want to trade the retracement. So I want to be trading something where it's like I take an entry right about here and then I leave take profits here and then I leave runners for the rest, and I can bang out some really crazy R because of that. And that's the reason why I love trading that so much. But we just didn't get the structure validated, right? Like for this move for example, this was our biggest one. After you swept that, I was expecting a move higher, right? So we pushed back into equilibrium of this previous leg. I was expecting the market to do this, right? I just want to see one push lower, take it the high, maybe an internal SMT, something like that, giving us some sure validation that we're now going to continue pushing lower. And then I would want to see displacement, and then we get re-entered here. But we don't end up having that happen because the market just straight dumps, right? So there's no way to trade this internal model without leaving a take profit that's misaligned for the external model, which is why I don't like to do those kind of things, right? I don't like to take those trades because they're unprotected, right? I just want to be trading the internal model solely, and then I want to see if I can leave runners for the external draw, right? That's all I want to do, and I didn't get to apply that strategy 100%, so I didn't take it today. So no problem with that. Just using this as a day to really journal and understand that those news drawn liquidities are really, really important, right? Like they are going to get hit even when we wake up and we look at the market and we're like, there's very low reasoning which we want to go dump today. When we see the structure validate it and we have that news drawn liquidity, it's a pretty high probability. If you go ahead and backtest, it's a pretty high probability that it ends up getting taken, right? So going into answering some questions, right? Why do we think that price dumped so much today, right? Two big reasons. There was that internal or that external SMT, right? Bigger time from SMT looks really good to go ahead and see some kind of push lower, right? It's just an overall bigger time frame macro pressure on that, right? As well, once we made this huge big move to the upside, we need to rebalance it, right? If you understand how the order book works, and I was explaining this to some people today, there's buy limits above every single, or sorry, sell limits above every single current level of price, right? Sell limits, and then there's buy limits below that, right? So when we move higher, we're only able to trigger the sellers in when we move this fast, right? That's what creates an imbalance. That's why the price wants to retrace to that level, right? But after hitting and making this huge run to the upside, we want to rebalance, right? So that's what news does. News comes back to relative equilibrium of the range. We still have equilibrium intact, by the way, and then we extend it higher during this part right here. We extend it higher up to here, right below the low. So now we have equilibrium and that low as targets, right? And then now that news becomes, once again, news manipulation. That becomes our news manipulation leg to go ahead and push lower, right? And then the change in state on the 1 hour becomes this level, and then we can look to see, can we get any kind of way that we can get involved in between there and there. And there was really no internal model at all to trade. So yeah, I mean, price was just a complete straight down move today. There was no really entry opportunity among this entire thing, which is why I wasn't able to find myself able to get involved anywhere really. So I mean, overall, I think it's fine. It was a good day to journal and understand price, but there was really not the most opportunity unless you took this. And if you would have left this for standard deviation runners, you could have banged it all the way down to somewhere in the middle here, and then external draw going right here. This is the best trade of the day, but I don't think too many people did that because once again, like, we're not expecting this big of a move on a Friday. We have to recognize when time and price align, right? Because when they align the most is when we're going to see that move, right? So while the day of the week might not be aligned, we have a ton of news on Friday, and we have market open, time aligning with the bigger time from SMT, change in the state. Like, this is a very fractal model. If we look 1 hour change, we have all of this liquidity here. Go to this. Now take that screenshot in your mind and then zoom in lower to here, where we see 15-minute chart, low right here. And then SMT at this high on the 1-minute chart, where we see SMT right here, and then dump low, right? So this model right here is very similar to this external model. And that's really like, when you see those very too close aligning models, that's when now this becomes our 1 hour change of the state. Then we can look for the pullback in the trade. That's when we can get the highest quality opportunity, right? And that's how we can align all of our biases and time frames and everything and just get the most beautiful, efficient models, right? So overall, I mean, that's the lesson from today. There really wasn't all too much to look at, but I thought it was a super great day to just dissect price action and kind of back test, build some conviction. We had a really nice push lower, and yeah. So overall, thank you all for listening. Hope you guys learned something. And if you like any of my style, any way that I explain things, go ahead, check out my narrative video I just made. It was super fat. This weekend I'm coming out with the structure video explaining market structure, and then finally we'll also be explaining narrative and structure in the next week and explain how they combine to create efficiency and efficient price action. So without further ado, I'm gonna let you boys go. Hope you guys learned something from the video, and yeah, so I'll see you guys later.